Yo, so yeah, finally going a little bit earlier today. Great. This is day two, which is not going to be in order, by the way. Yesterday was day one, today is day two, but day three, Thursday, I guess. But still, technically, it's the second stream in a let's build a projection model that I've got going, and where it's earlier, and you're all, yeah, probably have a more regular work schedule than me. I'm assuming this is doomed to failure because yesterday went great. I had a lot of fun. I think we got pretty far considering the ineptitude of planning and skill at the person on the camera that we have to work with. But I think pretty well. It was fun. We got through a pretty good build, especially where I had some of the work done beforehand, at least. And got stuck, not stuck, but we got into figuring out what I think is one of the hardest. At least it's one of the first things I really think you have to get set in stone to move on, which is looking at team volume. We looked at a few different ways of doing it, and I think I got through the math afterwards, and created an answer that's going to satisfy everyone and all the different things that we wanted to include in it well enough. So I'm going to upload that to the starter kit, the starter blank, because I haven't done that yet. And we're going to move on from there. But first, I wanted to walk you through what I've done off stream, where that blank is at, because I very much want that to be a bare bones thing. You're going to have to continually add and change and know where everything is so you can part your own style and your own thing on it. But also just the trick with most of these databases is constantly updating the data. And if you don't know everything is, or there's too much in there to really get your head around if you're starting, not today, but in a week, or next year when someone hopefully comes back and watches the videos, who knows? Because I managed to put the first video in a playlist on YouTube, so hopefully they'll be available for people later. I don't want it to get too thick and dense to start with, if you know what I mean. But anyway, let me show you what I came up with, and then we'll move on to thinking about projecting player volume out of that team pie. Sound good? How you all doing today? I actually have 21 people. Hey, how you doing? Did not expect that. I thought I was going to escape all your very valid and interesting questions that forced me to do better than I was planning to do, and apparently not. I'll just welcome it, I think. Assuming you're all at work and can't talk, so that'll be fine too. But comments so far have been just killing it, and being very helpful. So what was I going to do? Show you what I've done. That's right. All right, let me add this screen over here. Goddamn stream. All right, so what I found out, well, the first thing in my mind is this is kind of where we got to yesterday, trying to predict year n+1, the next year's passing volume and rushing volume using previous year's passing volume. I already decided I'm just going to have to give you some sort of history that you'd then have to add to as time moves on. So I'd imported the last 5 years from my database and shown, I mentioned that from Pro Football Reference at least, and a few other sites that hopefully I'll keep mentioning throughout this stream, you can get free information, because I don't want this to be a get behind my paywall. That is $1 high to see my NFL Yo, how you doing? Am I back up? J-Mike, I saw you post a comment just before it disappeared. Are you still here? Yeah, a storm literally just rolled in, by the way. I mean, we're going to persevere because it's been storming for 2 days now. I'm starting to get nervous and I need something to distract me. Last time we had a 2-day storm, my house flooded. So, anyway, how you doing? Am I back online? It says I am. We're just going to push ahead. Sorry about that. Check my settings here. Audio, good. Camera on. All right. Sorry, y'all. Where was I? I was going to show you what I did. All right. So, yeah, one of the first things I noticed is this weird volume attempt in 2015 or so for John Harbaugh or the Baltimore Ravens, and I managed to fix that. The way I fixed it was actually going to my NFL database. And I was looking up the sum of players' passing attempts, rushing attempts, and just overall attempts, so both by career year through player stats. But unfortunately, where I don't have it listed out, if a player changed teams, I don't have two separate lines yet. It was double counting for some years where players changed teams and then got a lot of extra work and so on and so forth. So instead, I've gone through the team history, and that's mostly fixed it. There's still a few things, and if you get into data, there are a few odd things that happen. They get remarkably annoying. Like right now, we've got Baltimore, or John Harbaugh's Baltimore, 386 passing attempts last year. And if you go ahead and look that up on Pro Football Reference, which I did, you see that's about 20 passing attempt shy. It's not counting like Sam Koch's one passing attempt and completion, or Tyler Huntley, or in fact Robert Griffin. That's probably because a lot, and that's about what the missing amount, by the way. And that's probably because a lot of these are being thrown either in garbage time and overtime, or in the playoffs, which is outside of my 17-game sample for my team history. But it's at least doing a better job, and so these numbers are actually more stable. All right, finally, the math. What we've got here is essentially a way of calculating regression to the mean using z-score. Now, I know you'll probably don't want to get too mathy. Hey, J-Mike, thank you. I appreciate you. So what I've done is set it up this way. So I've broken down the formula that you would use into individual parts. And that's because you could use that, and we might want to use a regression formula for different stats. And so seeing the formula broken down step by step hopefully provides you a path towards doing that for other things. As someone mentioned, you can also standardize and do regression formulas using, say, linear regression models another way. They mentioned that in that last stream, but this is using z-scores to normalize for standard deviations above and below the mean. And then you use that to create a z-score for the new average. It's all very mathy, but remarkably simple when you break it down. So essentially, we're just looking at the average that the head coach has thrown for over the last 5 coaching history attempts, and the standard deviation through their coaching history as well. Now, where we're only using 5 years, obviously there's a little bit more variance in there, but we're staying basic, and also I'm trying to give you as much as I can. But you know, I don't have everything for you. To create a z-score, you literally divide. Why am I using different cells here? Oh yeah. Anyway, you remove the average from the last data example. So last year, in the case of Cliff Kingsbury, his team threw 547 times. You remove that from the average, and then you divide by the standard deviation, and that creates this thing called z-score, which is actually the slope. If you ever get interested into linear regression models and think about the trend line that run through the center of a graph, z-score is basically the relationship between the slope on the graph. If you were to draw a little triangle, a right-hand triangle, between 2 different points on that graph. So it explains the slope, but that's how I understand it anyway. R squared, which in the fantasy football community is pretty well used as the default testing method. It's by no means the only one, but it explains correlation or covariance from one data set to another. So how sticky something is, or how well something explains the stats in the next data set. We typically talk about it in terms of how predictive something is. It's not exactly true, but we're getting overly mathy to understand it more than that. All right. So to create the Z-score, as someone mentioned last stream, they thought it would be interesting if we went through individual coaching history Z-scores. So instead of using an average, they wanted to know how sticky is John Harbaugh, though, compared to Dan Quinn. And I realize I'm still zoned out too far, but there you go. And so what I did is went back to my NFL database and I created this table. And I'm showing you all this just so you understand the basics of where it's coming from. It's by no means the best method. It's the one I figured out. And so I inverted the table where instead of, seasons running down the left and then overall stats running across the top, instead I've got the actual coaching histories, all 130 of them, running across the top for pass attempts and rush attempts. And then I asked it to look up the last 5 to 12 instances that they actually have data. And that way I could run a simple R squared score on what they did in year 1 versus what they did all the way over here. Where is it? I just... passing attempts is because there's 130 columns to this damn table. So give me a second. Yeah, that right there. And to what they did the following year. Now, unfortunately, I then found that this little R squared formula in Excel, which is equals RSQ, and then you add data set 1 or the X's and data set 2 and the Y's, so the graph. It really seems to break. When I actually graph this out, I get pretty good results for every single coach. And by that, I mean, if I literally input the data and create, these are 2 different coaches, but actually create a graph and then ask for the R squared, I do get results. There's just enough results for most coaches to create some level of R squared score. But this little formula you can use, which is a cheap hack instead of graphing everything out, it kind of breaks if there's less than 4 data points, which is fair because 4 is too few. 5 is bare minimum. And in fact, not really enough, but coaches rarely coach, for 10 years, and certainly the coaches we're interested in don't. So instead, what I did is I went back in and I said, if they have less than 4 years of experience or 4 years of history, then instead we're going to take the average. Because what happens with pretty much everyone that's got 4 years of history and some level of consistency is it does this, and this is not possible and not true. It says there is no variation in the data set. It says it's perfect 1-to-1, and I can't figure out why it's telling me that. As far as I can tell, it's just because there's too few examples and Excel's formula can't handle it. When I graph Dick LeBeau out, for example, and there is variance in his data, despite this R squared result saying there's 1, he's got like an R squared of like 0.65, but this R squared formula just wants to say it's 1, pure 1-to-1, and I cannot figure it out. And so players and so coaches with less than 3 are just getting the average. It's just the only way I could find to do it fairly and quickly. And then I imported that into my team tab of my database, and then re-imported all of that into our little streamer model here. Now, I think I'm going to remove this when I upload it and just leave you with this tab. But I did want you to know where those R squared scores are coming from, because they're by no means perfect. And, they also change over time. Once coaches get 5 years of history, you can create an actual result, for example. But I just wanted you to know for right now where that's coming from. So I'm going to normalize that now specifically and turn it into values instead of a formula looking up the value. And I'll do the same thing over here for rushing attempts, because obviously there are slightly different results for rushing attempt consistency. But this is an R squared or stickiness R squared result based on these individuals' coaching history or the average if they haven't coached for 5 years or more. And then I'll also normalize these. And that'll create at least a rudimentary team history with the live formulas in here, don't get too scared of them. It's just because I want you to be able to see how I'm going about calculating, because maybe I'm doing it slightly wrong and you're better at math than me, or you want to create a new way, so you have to understand the old way, or you just want to understand how I'm doing regression and to create these predicted passing attempts and rushing attempts on a team level. And our little stream model here is already importing them in right here. It's using an index match formula, which again, I'm going to keep the formulas live. We're doing it live, baby. So we're already projecting passing volume and rushing volume per team based on regression towards a head coach's own mean. Now, obviously, if you change the coaching history, because I also didn't fact check myself on whether coaches have changed teams, I think we're good. But still, then these volume predictions will change because we're going through the head coach in order to get them. But that's something that, because I'm keeping the formulas live, you could always update that. But again, this data will require curating and adding extra points on as years go by. But, for 2021, we're good. All right. So, yeah, let me just check there's nothing else importing here. Because I'm going to delete. I don't want to upload too much. I don't want it to become a burdensome, heavy thing. Yeah, okay, I think we're good. So I can delete this. Yes. Anything break? No, we're good. We're good, fam. This all looks good. All right, let me upload this and we'll get started on another part of it, which is thinking about how to project a player's volume onto this overall team volume, right? Also, just a note, I've got a little formatting in here to make life easier for me. This formatting doesn't exist in Google Sheets, so you'll have to use color coding if you want it in there or not. But I have labeled it because, pro tip, always label. Always label. Get my comment off your screen. Never. Hey, buddy. Hey, Mr. Dawkins. Pete out here grinding before I've had my second cup of coffee. Second cup of coffee sounds really nice, though, man. All right. I'll show you the ins and outs and uploading this thing. I'm going to close it and close my NFL database, too. Why not? Which I recently uploaded with those results because those seem like things my patrons want access to as well. The link for this thing, by the way, is in the description on YouTube. So check out that video or check out the YouTube stream. If you're on Twitch, I love you, man. I want to cultivate more of a Twitch streaming presence, but I can't get third-party software to work for me very well. Where is it? Right here. All right, so we're just going to replace this whole thing, and then you can go and get your own copy of it. I'll post the link in the chat as well, which should turn up in all three chats, but we'll see. Yesterday, it didn't want to turn up on Twitch. Let's see, where are we? Projections model, stream model. Okie dokie. Give it a second. And again, just in case you're unfamiliar with Google Sheets as well, which is definitely a possibility, I'm going to stop the syncing here so that my internet connection remains more stable. I'm protecting these sheets, which means even though you have access to them and you can follow the link and get in here and play around, you won't be able to change anything or edit anything. But that's because I want other people to be able to come get it and you to be able to play freely. And so what you do is you go to the file menu and click make a copy, and it'll create a copy of this whole thing in your own Google Drive, and it'll take you straight to it. And you can edit and change and scroll on it and add your own flavor to it after then. That's the basic idea here. All right. So, yeah, the formula's alive in here. So tread with caution, I guess. Not there's a lot of caution necessary because you can follow the link and get a brand new copy anytime, as long as I'm able to curate the original at least. All right. Yeah. And the player IDs are still all in there and everything else. So, yeah, we're good. All right. Let me share this link and we'll move on to the next stage. So I added a data package into Excel recently to try and help with some other complicated math. And it keeps not being able to find the file. That's why it keeps pulling up this warning message. I know it's annoying. Believe me, it's annoying me. All right. Okay, next stage, I guess. So essentially what we've got now, I've been able to give you at least, is player IDs and player names, their career year, their what I think is their current team, but it's worth checking that I haven't missed any, their position. I've got a little formula in here to calculate position rank based on projected PPR points when we get any. I've created this column because I find it useful to be able to completely remove a player just by typing 1 next to their name if they get injured all of a sudden and you just want to remove them real quick. And we can also have some knock-on effects for that. And if you notice, I've got the formula written, so if you type 1 there, it just completely nixes their position rank and turns them to an IR designation, because I think that's neat. We've got a space for projecting volume and a space for projecting the stats we need to calculate fantasy points, as well as the formulas already in here for calculating fantasy points with the appropriate formula for when we get any stats. So all our job is right now is trying to project some stats or decide on a method for projecting stats that we're comfortable with. We also now have a team volume section, so we're projecting team volume, and we can go over or under that. It's just, I see it as a rough guide, and also an indicator right here to let me know how close we are to our projected average based on that regression formula we created yesterday for the team's overall volume in targets and rushing attempts. All right, everyone clear? Everyone on the same page? I hope so. And we've also got this little team volume tab with those regression formulas in it, because we can reapply that logic somewhere else if we want to. And we might want to, I don't know. As well as a little coaching history here. A little coaching history in terms of passing attempts and rushing attempts for you to play with as you will. All right. Well, I'm tired. Can I quit now? Is that day 2? Can we call that day? That's 30 minutes of pure content right there. Are we good? I'm just going to leave this comment right here, J-Mac, since you asked so nicely. I'm tired now. No, so. Jesus Christ, that sounded like a gunshot. Lightning in real fashion out here in the burbs. All right, so team volume, done. Player volumes next. I think we have a total number of passing attempts and a total number of rushing attempts. You would, I would, yeah. So what we now need to do is to decide how much of that pie we're going to give specific players on that team. Who's going to get 27% of their targets? Who's going to get 5, right? Also, bear in mind, we typically, although I've tried to give a pretty good team depth chart here, we're not projecting all players. And so that should bear in mind when you're going to see variance or little leeways in the overall projected volume, and that should be there because there are other players that we typically don't track or care about in fantasy. Who was that? Sam Howell or whatever that got a passing attempt. Robert Griffin III, who got 10 passing attempts for Baltimore. And so we should be aware of that with projections overall. All right. Now, again, phone calls. I mean, it's all going off. The typical way of looking at volume that we're familiar with as well is looking at percentage. And I like going through percentage because it's fairly sticky when you look at R-squared results. Volume typically is, and that's also why I start with volume. So you can be pretty confident within a range that a certain player is going to get a certain level of whatever pie is available for the team. Now, here we're not adjusting for scheme fit or imagined scheme fit changes, but again, we're shooting for a medium projection based on what's previously happened up till last year. And so that's the way I think we should go about it. We should create some sort of, as we have with team, some sort of history for players' volume overall through a percentage system. So I guess I'm going to have to give you more data, but also you should be aware you're going to have to curate more data to create projections moving forward, right? So player history tab, I guess, is what we need. Going to give this a nice pretty color. Turn that one green. Player history, I guess we'll turn blue. All right. So pro tips, where to get data if you don't want to jump behind someone's or a fancy website like RotoViz's paywall, right? First one that comes to mind is Air Yards. And last time I checked, that was still up. Airyards.com. Created by Josh Hermsmeyer, the GOAT himself. If you go to data, you can't see this well enough. Hang on. Literally just airyards.com. Go to data, and it should have 2020 Airyards data. He's not up. I don't know how long or how much he's going to update it because occasionally it went away. But for right now, it's a source of free data. And you can select positions, and you can also select years. And you can also select weeks, and then you click the little download button, and you get a history, and you can create a history of volume, essentially, targets, receptions, receiving yards, and also total air yards. It's a real quick way of doing it, and it's pretty easy to do. Let me see how it comes out these days. Let's include retired players. Why not? And let's just include the 2020 season. There it is. Yeah, look. You've got player names, you've got positions, thankfully, also team designations in that year for the weeks you selected. You've got targets, you've got receiving targets. We got a lot here to work with for free. Thank you, Josh. And Air Yards is going to come into play because I like using Air Yards and Whopper and Racer and projections in general. And so even without getting behind a paywall, there is a source right here. Oh, scaled Whopper. That's interesting. I don't know what that is. That's a new thing Josh has apparently added. You're going to have to go check out his timeline and figure out what scaled Whopper is. So, yeah, it's pretty neat. And if you want to create target share, obviously you just need to look at a player's targets versus the team targets, which we could use in our previous data we've already got in the model, or you could do it internally through this sheet. One way of doing that would be going, and also you could download, several years worth of data. Know which year it is. That's the way I would do it, and the way I have done it before I had a bigger history than this. Create a year column, for example, and then when you go download the other years from airyards.com, you can just where is it? Like you go, oh, he's only got 2020 now. Oh, old Airyards data. No, it does exist. So you can go and get previous years. But anyway, that's kind of a moot point right now. And then you could add it in and make sure all the columns line up. And you've got, a quick and easy database of volume. And one way you could then go about creating target share, for example, is looking at team targets. If we're going to do it internally to this data source by using SUMIFS. And then we're going to ask it to calculate the sum of targets for players on this team. And if we had different years, we could also add the condition of this year. And again, if you haven't used that formula, I've got a very quick how-to on it, but it's pretty easy. And then, yes, we're going to add in player name because we only want to know. No, we don't need. We just need to create a team target section. Neat. And then to create the target share percentage, you just divide the players' targets by the team targets, and hey presto, you've got target share for that year in whatever data you download from airyards.com. Now let me look. It doesn't look like no, he's got a target share on here as well, so you don't even have to do that manually. Like I just created this target share using the data it actually gives you, one divided by the other. But if you scan over to the right, he also actually gives you a target share column. So you could just use this for overall targets, which is neat. He's also got an air yard share one as well. I don't need this, so I'm going to get rid of it. But source of free data if you want to go get your own and play around with it and update your data as you go forward. The other, of course, is again Pro Football Reference, where you can get a team history and you can get player history, but it requires a lot of copying and pasting. And they do have some apps, but they've largely put a lot of them behind a paywall now. And so that's awkward. Let me see another source of data that you can offer to use, FF Today, fftoday.com. They have some interesting stats and team stats going back for a while, so you can create a history of player attempts, player targets, target share, and rushing share, right? And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to get some sense of the share of an offense individual players have, so we can import that and start applying it to our team projection, right? Right? No? Okay. Well, that's what I'm going to do. Fortunately, I have my own. Damn it. But that's the kind of thing I would do to create a data set for myself in that stream model I've just uploaded for you all. But let's see. NFL database. Yes. I have to update you. Okay, not right now. All right, so for right now, I'm just going to copy and paste a quick version of my NFL data, which you can curate from all those various places we just mentioned. Yeah, come on now. Hide copy. Oh, come on, man. I am. I've never had this problem. I don't know what Excel's deal is today. We did this literally yesterday. Okay. Let me save this. Here we go. Neat. Now, this is where having those IDs is going to come in handy, I hope, in the default that I've already given you, because when you get data with IDs, it means you don't have to question so much if you're looking up the correct player, and so on and so forth. Remove these. Not going to need that. All right. Remove some of my own formatting. So I'm just kind of trying to make it pretty for myself. All right. And we're going to go ahead and create a helper column because I'm going to assume we need one. All right. So, what do we want to know? Well, the basic would be we want to know a player's volume last year, right? That'd be the first thought to go through. So let's try that. All right. So we want, no, passing attempt volume. No, we're going to go through rushing attempts and targets first. So we're going to do a little index match formula here where we're going to go import players' target share and rushing share. Am I on targets? Yeah. Target share for last season using their player ID. Lock in some of those cells. And if there's an error, I'm just going to ask it to return a result of 0 so that we've got numbers everywhere. Turn those into percentages. All right. Let's hide some of this shit because we don't need to see any of it right now. All right, so taking a look at Arizona, what we see is it's pulling in 12% target share for Chase Edmonds, 8% for Darnold. Interestingly enough, the tight end, 4% for Max Williams, 29% for DeAndre Hopkins, which sounds right, 16% for Christian Kirk, 16% for Larry Fitzgerald, 8 from some ancillary now, wide receivers, Rakeem Boyd, and Demir Bird. AJ Green is 18% over there in Cincinnati last year. And Rondo Moore obviously gets a 0 because he's done nothing. So that already brings up some questions, right? Like, what do you do with Rondo Moore? Well, no, anything you want, really. But I'm going to go ahead and create an averages tab. Specifically as it relates to volume. So let's see what we're going to want. Target share averages, that makes sense. For by position. Yeah. So let's do QB, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Do a target percentage or target share average. In the player history, I'm going to go to target share. And ask it to create the average of target share for that position since, I don't know, we'll create a certain date threshold. And let's say we could create it by team level, but let's put a certain volume threshold in there. All right. So position, again, I want it for the positions I've got listed here. Since we're going to create a little helper cell over here so we can modify that whenever we want. And also a volume selection over here. And we're going to lock in the cells we just selected on the player history. See, hopefully you've already got, if you're doing this or thinking about this, you've got a million things you want to add, right? Let's say it's since 2010. Like, what about if you're a rookie, or what about if you're a veteran, or what about if you've just had a team, another player in your team? Let's say a volume threshold of around 50 as well. That's all well and good, and we can make those adjustments, but first you have to get it built out so you're looking up some level of average, some level of result. And then you can work on what kind of adjustments you want to make to it. Well, that's my general thinking anyway. That's what I try and do. I'm going to create result and then modify it based on what I think works best, or based on what my testing says works best. All right. Yeah, let's actually add a team section in here, just because I think people are going to find that interesting or want to do it based on team. Yeah. And why not? We'll also add team position rank. Since presumably we're going to want more than one, we'll create the first 3 on a team. That'll make sense to me. All right. Plus, as complicated as you make it, the more you're going to have to make it complicated for everyone else, you know? You have to have more and more different options, the more little photos you want to put on it. So we'll just stick with 3 for now. And then we're going to have to make, let's put a little helper section in here. We're going to create a name for these things. So we're going to say Arizona Team 1. And we're going to say target share. Arizona for team position 1. Yeah, that'll help. Put a little if error function in there, so you know we're always returning a numerical result. So it's not going to look up a faulty average. All right, now the other thing I'm going to need to know. Target percentage. Yeah, that'll help. I'm going to have to ask a question in a minute because we can go several different ways with this kind of thing. I'm just getting a list of teams right now. It's not particularly complex. You could probably type them out quicker than I can do this. Because we're going to want to do it for all teams. It's probably a quicker way of doing this, but I don't know what it is. This is often the case. And all I'm doing is just creating a way to look up a number if a player doesn't have enough history or if they're a rookie, and also a way to look up averages, so we can look at team history if we need to, if we want to do that kind of thing, which is where my question comes from. It's how would you want to go about adjusting volume year over year? We could look at it through a regression like we did with team volume. But it's still going to create a question when players don't have even a single year of experience, which is why we're going to need this average anyway. So we're going to go ahead and create this average, predicting we're going to need it. Storm seems to have passed, so that's nice. I'm going to get some music because I am not enjoying sitting here in silence. There we go. So create a default average we can rely on if we need to, for target share at least. This is an average based on team history as well. Now, another way you could do it, and you could even create this average within this, based on how you want to do it, is actually look at an average based on player year. And you could just look at rookies and sophomores and everything else, because we have, in my data set, we have career year, but assuming you're not going to have such a sophisticated data set, sophisticated as mine, obviously. I'm just going to go through a rough average of teams for now. And so what I'm going to tell it is if there's an error, and if the career year equals... I'm in the wrong one. In the wrong cell, sorry. There we go. So let's ask it if the career year equals 1, so they're a rookie, and there's an error, so it's not looking up their, their player history. We'll send it to the average tab. I'm going to ask it to look up. Yeah, wide receiver. Didn't even think about that. Wide receivers. Using this helper column we created. And for that, we're going to need target share, script, and team. And we're going to ask it to look up the third on each team. How's that? Target share, team, position rank. That works. Target share, team, position rank third. Yeah, for wide receivers. Because we're not going to want all rookies to be, the wide receiver 3 of their own team, right? So that doesn't work. So, how about we create another kind of average? Getting a list of teams again. All right. So we're gonna go kind of gonna want a default average. Instead of looking up team, we want it to look up more specifically position. With running backs. Average FS. All right. This time we want target share. For different positions. Do we want a team component to that? Nah. Yeah. I'm just going to look up the position average. Team. That'll help. Since. Team condition. Position rank. Or just position outright. Since 2010 still. Why not? It's a lot easier if I can just go get the one I made earlier, but we wouldn't be doing it together. You know what I mean? All right. I'm just trying to create a position average of target share by team. In case anyone's wondering what all the silence is about. Don't know why I'm going through team so heavily, but there we are. It'll be interesting to go, team specific. All right. It's going to give us an average to rely on. This is very much a brute force answer. The more I think about it. All right, so we're creating some sort of average target share, which means we can then create targets. By multiplying the target share by the team overall volume. Because that's how targets are made. Target share multiplied by passing attempts that we're projecting for the team. Populate. All right, that's fun. We got our first stat. We're getting some errors, though. That's why. Quarterbacks. There we go. I got this formula wrong over here because I'm putting target share in instead of raw targets. Yep, we're projecting too many targets already. Look at that. Fun stuff. Ah, damn it. Sorry, just fooling with my own formulas here. All right, so we're definitely over projecting team volume so far. Let's go take a look at what's going on. So breaking into Arizona, we're projecting. I got to resave that. 163 targets for Hopkins, 101 targets for Demir Bird and AJ Green. Fun. 90 targets for Christian Kirk and 90 targets for Larry Fitzgerald. 70 for Rondell Moore. Okay. 45 for the ancillary players. So what's going wrong there? I want to hit a hazard, I guess. Or one of you. All right. Well, essentially what's going on is the average doesn't work when you've got new players on a team and you can't provide the average to just any player on the depth chart that doesn't have a history, because then you get Andy Isabella and Keyshawn Johnson getting the same amount of targets, and that's an unreasonable expectation, right? There we go. All right. Just going to have to make some adjustments to a methodology for looking up last year's target share, right? Just going to put J Mike's comment back on the screen. All right. So without anyone here to offer what they'd rather, I'm going to go through one method that I used to use to adjust for that. So far we're projecting for 300 targets more than we're projecting passing attempts for the team next year. Just by the way. All right. I'm also going to hide these cells because it's too hard to see. Don't need to see all that just yet. All right. So we're just worried about volume. Targets for now. I'll remove that average. Pardon me. So instead, we're just going to return to the player's average or 0. All right. One way we can adjust this is call this team or player average. And instead, we're going to create a new section called team volume average. QB1, and then we can designate Chase Edmonds as a running back 1, and Benjamin as a running back 2, tight end 1, tight end 2, tight end 3. I'm creating a depth chart essentially here. All right. And then we're going to look at the target share average. Player history. For that team, that position rank since what is column G? And we're going to create a little helper cell as well. Constantly necessary, apparently. That's fine. Start again. Team specific. All right. Let's create a team history of target shares since 2010, essentially. Predicted. So now it's looking at the average between the team history and the player's history. Almost better. Gonna have to force it to conform to the volume expectation we have. Kind of like the idea of creating a depth chart. That's why I'm doing this. Put Gurley in Atlanta when he'd moved. Currently a free agent like that. Might have to get more sophisticated about this one. This isn't working. I get too sophisticated with you, though. I'll show you where you could get air yards from, though. Yeah, it's just going to over-project and over-project and over-project, so this isn't going to work. Even that's too much. How are we going to do this simply? I like my depth chart idea, but it's not working well enough. That's why 116%. Dang. Mm-hmm. All right. It's very important to player's history and more important to team history, at least. Now we have to force the two to combine. Tell you what. I don't want you to have to bid and draft and regress ADOT. All right. Sorry, I've gone quiet on you. This is a problem with trying to create a new way of doing it by myself, at least. I'm trying to keep it simple. Take some thinking, you know? Just gonna label it. All right, so how are we gonna go about player volume simply? Depth chart isn't gonna work. Obviously, player average isn't gonna work, but I was hoping it would work as a bolster. I mean, Larry's always going to be too high, and so is AJ Green when he switches teams, and you're going to have to deal with all that. Simply. Without, completely soaking up all the targets. This is 100 more targets than we're expecting. I mean, that's not bad. You're going to have to overproject teams. But even when we look at it, you don't want to project AJ Green for 105 targets. That seems harsh. Does it? Doesn't it? No, it's not terrible. Hmm. $18, $19, $20. Use a 3-year history. Does that help? Make it tighter? Oh, looser. Okay. Players last year isn't going to work for us. All two of you don't have any ideas, would you? I don't want you to have to start off making assumptions. I want it to create a volume expectation that's reasonable given the amount work we've put into a team volume. And then you can adjust from there, which is something I was planning to get to later. Go screen blind here. Just going to concentrate on this depth chart for a second. And QBs are an entirely different matter, to be fair. Well, Mitch is a free agent too. Dang it. Wow, Cincinnati's got a lot of running backs sitting on its depth chart. Noticeable. I'm assuming Jason Witten retired. Again. Yeah. as a rookie running back. There he is. I've got him listed as a wide receiver. Okay. Yes, this depth chart's a bit of a mess here. He stills. Didn't he move? He's a free agent right now. All right. Assuming Philip Rivers is free agent now too. I'm trying to figure out what to do about the Colts depth chart. Yeah, I suppose. I'm looking up their online depth chart. Where's Travis Etney? Come on now. Chris Thompson still exists? By golly, he doesn't. Melissa didn't put Carlos Hyde in here. Interesting. Yo. When am I going to start using as soon as I finish learning the language, to be honest with you, Kyle. Great. Really appreciate you checking it out. Yeah, it's scraped a lot now, so it should convert back pretty well, I imagine. Let's make them happy for a second. Oh shit! I gotta go pretty soon, and this depth chart's taking me forever to make. Larry Roundtree isn't a bloody wide receiver. God dang. Isn't Kelly still a thing? Yeah, a lot of theoretics still exist. Anyone? Apparently, he's still on the Raiders. I mean, yeah, he's down there, but he's there. Appreciate checking that, dude. Really gotta clean up these depth charts, actually. And New England listed with like 4 quarterbacks. This is on there, right? Ted Ginn. Free agent. I doubt he's going to get signed anyway, but there you go. Depth chart thing could definitely work the more I look at it. Just have to figure out the balance. And also clean up these depth charts. Essentially, you're getting a scheme fit overlook that we can compare to a player's usage. Don't hate it. Yeah, he's still there. Demaryius Thomas is a free agent for sure. Quincy Enunwa, wow. Name from the past. Ledger more on the Jets. Look at that. Zach Ertz still not traded. Who knew? Where did James Conner end up? It's Arizona, isn't it? No, Houston. No, it was Arizona. Jesus. Then he had it right, too. Volume-wise, Deontay is going to be one, right? You and Kane ended up in the Steelers at some point. In the Ravens right now. Ravens are really trying with that depth chart. Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to take me quite this long to sketch out depth charts. That's what's happening right now. Okay. Those aren't perfect, but there's something to work with. Good Lord. Oh, yeah. We need a free agent team, by the way. That's just for players who don't have anywhere to sit right now. Fairly low volume, just to create some level of projection so they fit in, so you don't have to forget players who don't have depth charts, unsigned free agents, and the like. All right. All right, sorry, there's a lot of quiet time. All right. So what I've hopefully what I was demonstrating there, I guess, is to create a depth chart column, work through the actual players on the list, and just to designate who's the running back 1, 2, 3, who's the wide receiver 1, 2, 3. Because from there we can actually look at the team history of the target share or the volume share that players in that depth chart actually created. And that's going to give you a scheme fit to bolster against player usage. Still not perfect, but importing last year's. Tell you what we're going to do. We're just going to start out closer to the end here instead of teaching that bit. If we look at the average of that player's history, we can bolster that against the scheme fit of recent years. And then we're going to say the projected volume is the average of the scheme or the team usage. And the player's average of the last 3 years. It's going to create fairly reasonable volume expectations to start with, but as you can see, we're going to have some issues, especially with teams that just, signed an AJ Green, which is where we're going to have to get slightly more complicated with player volume, but such as it is, it is. And then we're going to have to adjust for the type of players that are coming on to the depth chart. For example, obviously Rondon Moore has a 0 player history in terms of volume, but being a rookie has different expectations. This is where we're going to turn back to this average tab and try and create a way of doing that we like in order to modify player expectations without significant history. In a way we like. Or we can go back to looking at regression formulas, I guess. All right. I'm going to do the same roughly for rushing attempts here. Or rushing attempt share, rather. BX. Me. I'm creating a targets and rushing attempts column. Using this projected volume, which is the average of the team usage and the player usage of the last 3 years. Yep. Similar problems. But honestly, as long as it kind of stays within 100, obviously a few places it isn't, then we're just over projecting certain players, which is actually fairly normal for seasonal projections. Because obviously we're not accounting for injuries and stuff like that in that team volume expectation. So I'm not overly concerned about that too much yet. All right. It says the most targeted is going to be Julio Jones, Mike Evans, and DeAndre Hopkins. They're slightly below historic heights. Like normally we get a few players with 160 targets or more a year. But, you don't project that for a medium projection. In terms of rushing attempts, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, it's definitely working to get the right numbers in the right places, if you know what I mean. All right. So depth charts can do something for us, apparently. And I think that's interesting because then you can just change the depth chart number and you get a pretty decent change overall. Next, we'll have to start converting targets and rushing attempts into receptions and yards. And also, I probably want to play around with the way we're creating volume there a little bit. Because that's still not perfect. The average of the team usage and the player's history of the last 3 years is decent. But like I said, we have to create some expectation for rookies. And we can do that to some extent where we can put them where we want on the depth chart, for example. So if we change Rondale Moore to 2, immediately gets a boost. Well, that's something. But I think we want to play with that player average a little bit because this player average isn't quite right. I kind of like having this scheme fit or this kind of scheme fit by looking at the team usage recently since 2010, but we can shorten that to 2019 to get a last 3 years history. I just kind of like that idea as well. And easy to modify as well. Still not there. Still not getting any points, obviously. We're just working on projecting volume still, but now we've moved on to try and project rushing and passing attempt or receiving attempt volume for wide receivers, and even just using this average, it's creating pretty reasonable medians. Obviously, we don't expect Julio to be the most targeted player in the league next year. And in fact, if you go to the last 3 years, he actually dropped to top 4. But I think you're going to understand why a player like Julio is going to rise immediately before we start making any adjustments based on career year, based on experience, based on what's going on this particular year, and the moves the team has actually made. So, yeah, as a beginning, it's at least making sense. It's creating reasonable volume expectations. Reasonable. But we're still we're over projecting our teams way too much. Like 290 attempts over. That's an AJ Green thing, though. If we go and look. Yeah, it's because AJ Green's getting like 128 targets. That doesn't help. And then you've got Christian Kirk, who obviously is going to be affected by, the recent signing of Rondale Moore a little bit more. And so we have to adjust a player's expectation based on depth chart changes, or at least team moves, which, you could just create an assumptions tab. But we're trying to track something that's a little more automatic to start with, at least. So, all right. I think I'm pretty comfortable leaving it there for now. Yeah. Come the next stream. Yeah, we don't need to do that for a team expectation. For the free agent team, we added a free agent team so we can actually project people that aren't on I'm actually on Teams yet, and that actually becomes useful throughout a projection system, actually. So it's probably something I should have mentioned earlier. But there we go. These things come up as we work. And I gave you a few tips on where to find data for players to start creating these team averages and player averages. So I feel like that's pretty decent day 2. Big disappointment from day 1. I think that's fair to say, but that's because I'm streaming at a time where I'm less likely to be able to talk to most of you all because you're all busy working, and also, you know, a storm knocked out my internet there for a while, so that was fun. But yeah, it's coming along. If you check out this video later, like drop a comment, let me know. There was a lot of me sitting there in silence. I did not enjoy that, and hopefully you enjoy. I explained the process I was going through, primarily adding a depth chart column and then going through and literally deciding who I wanted to be the running back 1, 2, and 3, and then having it through the data that you have to collect about player usage, and creating expectations around the team volume based on the team's history, and then the player's history based on whatever player history you were able to grab from free sources or my database or anywhere else. So yeah, fairly effective. Thanks, J-Mike, for coming in there for a second, just to tell me not to use his comments. And Kyle, really appreciate reminding me I also have to learn R in the middle of it. I'm just joking. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. I will learn it as soon as I can. I'm not telling you I'm not grinding. It's just language. I struggle with language, and coding language doesn't seem to be any easier. Excel is easy because, well, easier because it's just algebra, and I actually pretty much understand algebra. So I just had to learn, you know, some of the keywords, and it was pretty easy to work on from there. All right. Last note before I get out of here on day 2, make sure you check those depth charts, create a depth chart column, and go through some of the process I just did if you haven't already. But also, I noticed a lot of players that were just free agents and no longer on teams, and also I'll make some modifications as well because Javonte Williams is listed like a wide receiver and he's a running back. So, you know, a few little mistypes on my part there. So, yeah, make sure you check those out in your version as well. All right, thanks very much. Day 2's done. Day 3, I guess, is probably going to be about Thursday. That's my best guess. But for right now, I have to get out of here because I have to make sure I drop off our paperwork for the 4-H camp because my daughter will kill me if she doesn't get to go to 4-H camp this year. So, yeah, welcome to the grind, man. Welcome to the grind. That's literally the best thing I can say at this point. Thanks very much. Bye.